All right, hey guys, this is Ron from the Rockstar Paint class. If you're coming to us for the first time, welcome. If you are a repeat customer, thank you for your business. So today we're going to be painting what we like to call King Edward, which is a tribute to the late great guitar god Eddie Van Halen. Today we're going to be painting with Alpha 6 acrylic paint. All right, you'll notice the paints that's included in the kit. We've got black, white, orange, yellow, light blue, and red, and we're going to be using all of those colors. All right, so make sure you get those ready. What I've done is I've put the paint in a little palette, or a little plastic palette that I can actually use because I'm going to be standing up to direct the video. But if you guys have a paper plate or a regular plate, you can put it on, just drop a couple drops of paint on that just to keep it separate so the paint doesn't blend together. That'll be fine. A little cup of water that we're going to be rinsing our brushes with, and then some paper towels or napkins to clean the brushes as we go. So we're going to start, and I'm going to start with the lighter colors, all right, and I'm going to work to the heavier colors, the darker colors, as we go. I don't want to put a lot of paint on the canvas because I want the paint to dry fairly quickly so we can move on to the next color. So what we'll do is we'll start with our yellow, and we'll put it on fairly light, all right, just a little bit of a indication. You'll notice as well that I'm not really concerned about getting it on the black because that's why we have black paint. We're going to clean that up in the end. I just don't want to leave any white where the paint would stop. So smearing it over the black will allow us to make sure that there's no white of the canvas creeping through where the two colors are. All right, and you'll notice how I'm doing this is I'm literally like just pushing the paint into the canvas. All right, there's no real rhyme or reason to it, and I'm not getting very technical with it. So don't feel that you need to basically follow an outline. This technically isn't paint by number. So feel free to get a little loose with it. There's no reason to keep it crazy. All right, so we got it along the outside, the perimeter of his hair. All right, and I'm going to put a little bit of yellow on the arms and the body just for indication. All right, if you're looking at the reference picture that you have, you'll notice that there's not a lot of color on his body, so to speak. We kind of left the white, which gives a nice contrast against the black background. All right, so paint a little bit down there. So we followed right along the under part of his arm where that line is there, and then I just crept that a little bit wider towards the bottom. Okay, leaving the white. All right, the same way in the hair so far. We've got the white. Leave the white. Don't paint it completely colored in. All right, I'm going to go back up to the face up here, and now on the original that you're referencing, you'll see it's got orange there as well. But for the purpose of this, what I want to do is I want to go over the entire section with the yellow, and that'll give us a base for our orange. It'll actually allow the orange to come on a little more smoother. So don't worry about keeping yourself a solid line where the orange is going to be. I'm going to actually fill that all in with yellow, and then once it dries, we'll go back and we'll put the orange on top of it. All right, and again, if you can see this pretty up closer, you'll notice there's not a lot of paint, just enough to cover the canvas. All right, the brush is fairly dry, and that's going to, like I said earlier, that's going to allow that paint to dry faster and allow us to complete the painting a little more quicker. Okay, so you'll notice almost literally right down the center of his nose there is where I stopped, and then I got a little off center of the chin. So I just colored the entire, what would be the right side of his face in yellow like that. And again, we'll go back later, we'll put the orange in over top. All right, but that's what it should start to look like there. All right, I'm going to continue around the perimeter of his hair. Okay, where obviously this is we'll call it a live shot of Eddie, so he's got stage lighting on him, so he's got that little halo effect around his hair. So we're going to indicate that with yellow. All right, again, look, I wasn't really concerned about keeping the yellow off the black. I'll fix that later. So the entire perimeter of his hair is now outlined in yellow. All right, moving on. We're going to put some yellow on his chest here. All right, I'm starting over where that his shoulder would be up top here. All right, I'll put some there and then continue a little bit down here. And again, don't get real technical with this. It's not meant to be literal. It's just an indication of color. You'll notice as we do these, if you've painted with me before, I like to move the color around. There's no one isolated area of any color. So we're going to want to make sure there's pieces of each color everywhere on the canvas, and that's technically what I'm doing here on the body. All right, a little bit of color, a little bit of yellow here. Okay. And then I think what we'll do is we'll put some yellow on the hand. All right, so cover some of the fingers, and then we'll do some yellow on the guitar. Again, just all we're doing is moving that color around. All right, so you've got a nice even composition of color, you know, of one color, so to speak. All right, and when you're painting it, make sure that as you go through, the yellow actually touches the black. You know, like you'll see my yellow is actually on top of the black. This way, I've assured myself there's no white canvas coming through those two. That's what makes it look a little weird at the end. If you've got white poking through, it'll look like you didn't finish it. So we're going to want to make sure that the yellow is on there uniform enough to cover where we want it to be. All right, so that'll do it for yellow for the first pass anyway. So why don't we give that a second to dry, and then what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll put the orange on next. Okay, so I let this yellow dry for a little bit, so you could just touch it to make sure yours is dry as well. And then what I'm going to do is with the paper towel we have, I'm just going to go ahead and just dry the yellow off the brush. There's no sense in cleaning it because we're going to go on to orange, and the orange and the yellow, you know, they're friendly. They don't mind each other, so there's no reason to have to worry about cleaning that off for now. All right, a little bit of orange on the brush. Okay, and what I'm going to start with the hair like we did before. All right, against the black. And now I don't want to cover all of that yellow up top, but I do want to make sure, like we said earlier, that I actually cover all of the canvas. So let's make sure that yellow and that orange actually touch, as well as the orange touches the black. Okay, so we're going to leave a rim of yellow around a perimeter there, and then we're going to come in and we're going to fill in the rest of that area with the orange. And what you might notice too is the orange, and again we're going to put this on fairly light, but orange, unlike some of the other colors, is very translucent. All right, it doesn't go on very heavy. So if you find yourself looking where it looks a little streaky, again, don't worry about it because we can always go over it again with orange. You know, and even after the lesson's over, if you want to go back and add more orange to it to make it a little more of a heavier color, obviously you feel free to do that. Okay, again, these are random shapes. I'm not really, you know, following any guideline or specification for it. It's just indication that there's texture in his hair, and we want to show that. Okay, so you got something like that. Okay, you'll see the orange is, again, filling in the areas where the black meets the hair. Okay, but I just want to leave the yellow around the perimeter. And just like I did with the yellow, I'm not concerned about getting it on the black. I'm going to clean that up in the end. The nice thing about this wedge brush, the thickness of it, is you'll see how I'm painting it. I'm not really using the thinness of the brush. I'm using the width of it, and I'm just actually like splattering the paint on the canvas, or pushing it on the canvas, so to speak. All right, and it actually fills that color in very nicely. Okay, something like that for his hair. All right, so we're going to continue orange on the top of his face. So what I'll do is I'm going to cover this little area over here first. So let's just make this shape right around his jaw here. We're almost going to put like that diamond shape in his face. All right, so if we start with this, a little heavier up top. All right, so let's start with a shape like that around the edge of the face there. And then what I want to do is I'm going to come back from this point, give a little bit of a curl. All right, and then I'm going to fill that in above his eye. All right, let's bring this all the way over. So we're painting over top of the yellow. And again, the reason we did that is the yellow gave us a little bit of a nice base. And it gives us almost like a primer, if you will, underneath that orange to make it a little heavier, as opposed to the white. The white would actually pop through, so we didn't want to do that. All right, we'll continue down here along that crease of his cheek, and then let's bring that down to touch there. Okay, so we got something like that. You can see it's almost a diamond. We've created a diamond on the side of his cheek. And then I want to fill this section in here. A little heavier. All right, and then that will take us over to the jaw. Okay, so something like that, I think, gives us a pretty cool shape going on there. All right, let's add a little bit to the nose up top. All right, so I've covered that right down the bridge of his nose. We painted that orange as well. And then I want to come up under his lip here. Let's just get a little bit of a shape like that. And again, I left a little bit of a gap there with white. We'll go back and we'll fill that in with orange in a bit. But this will give us, I think, a good start to his face. Okay, and remember, if the orange is looking streaky, just let it dry. We'll go back and we'll put a second coat on in a bit. That'll heavy it up for us. All right, so we'll move on to the arm. What I'm going to do is almost right where that hairline is. All right, I'm going to take a straight line down and just give it a little curve by his elbow. All right, and then let's harden that line up. Okay, just like that. All right, and then we're going to paint this area in. We'll bring it right up to that yellow like we did before. All right, let it touch the black line that we have on the canvas already. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to fill this entire section in. And we'll bring this all the way down to where he looks like he's got a bracelet or something on his wrist here. So this entire arm is going to be orange. And again, don't use a lot of paint as of right now, just enough to cover that white on that canvas. Because the more paint you use, the longer it's going to take for you to dry. And if it doesn't dry and you put another color on top, you're going to smear it. And bring that orange right up to that black line. So it's his entire arm is going to have orange. Okay. Once we've got that, I want to add this second area of orange over his hand. Let's put a little bit on that finger there. And then we'll fill in the rest of that white area with orange as well. And I'll hit this little section between those two black lines. I think it's red on our original, but it'll be orange for now. All right. I think that might do it for the orange. Again, we can just heavy up some areas up here. Okay. All right, so that's the section of orange we've got. What we'll do is we'll let that dry for a second or two. All right, and what we'll do is when we'll come back and we'll start adding different colors. But let's take your time and figure out where you are at this point. And again, the orange and yellow are the two colors we have on now, and we'll probably continue on with red in a second. All right, so the orange should be pretty much dry by now. And if your brush is like mine, it's getting a little bit thick with paint, so I'm just going to add a little water on that to, again, not really clean all the color off. There's no need to. We're going to go on to red, but just to moisten that up to allow the paint to flow a little easier. Okay, so with that said, let's grab some red. All right, and we don't have a lot of red on here, but especially on the face, but we do want to indicate some. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to run a line right down the bridge of his nose there, okay, over to where that black line is on his face. Okay, so if you can see that, it's just one line down the side of his nose. All right, I'm going to take that and I'm going to make the shadow under his nose in red as well. And that's going to almost look like an M Okay, so a little bit of a shadow under the center of his nose there. All right, let's heavy that up a little bit. All right, so you should have something like that. Okay, and I'm going to take it from the top, and I'm going to come underneath where I've got the black of his eye on the canvas. All right, so let's run that line right up there. So just underneath the part of his eye, you know, that's black. We just want to indicate that there's a hint of red there, and that'll give us a little shadow under his eye. All right. Going on now where we have the orange off of his bottom lip. Let's come right along that shape as well, and then heavy it up on his chin. All right, we've got something like that, and I think I want that to be a little heavier. So let's go a little wider there. Okay. All right, we're going to move down now. This section here, remember we originally put the yellow on his chest, and then we painted the arm in orange. So now I want to come right up to where my yellow is, and I want to make that red. And then that'll take us all the way over to the black line on your canvas to indicate where his arm is. So we've got a little rectangle of red. I'm sorry, red on his chest there. All right, I'm going to do the same thing now along the arm. So what I want to do now is let's make a line with our red, okay? And again, I want to make this line not so structured because it's going to have bumps and stuff where the muscles in his arm would be. So starting with that bracelet, let's give it a little bit of a wave here. All right, up here, it'll flatten off a little bit, and then we'll bring it right down to that corner of his elbow. Okay, so you see the line has got a little bit of a wave to it, so it's not really straight. All right, and that'll indicate how the light is reflecting off the different muscles in his arm. Okay, if it was a straight line, it'd look like a robot. We don't want that. And then we'll paint that in over top of our orange. All right, I want to add a little red in this little area here between that bracelet thing he has there. Okay, and again, make sure with your red you've covered it. So the red is a solid red. You know, the painting we've got here is very graphic. Okay, so there's not a lot of blending going on at all. So you want to make sure that all these shapes are pronounced, the edges are nice and clean. Okay, so once we've done that, we'll go into the guitar. So anybody who knows Eddie Van Halen, he's famous for his red, white, and black striped guitar. It's a random pattern, so there's nothing really technical about it. So let's not get caught up on the shapes. So I'm just going to start making triangles and squares just to show where it is. All right, there's no rhyme or reason to this. Some bigger than others, but leave yourself that white line because we're actually creating a white lined pattern. So we're filling in the negative areas here. And we can make them fairly big, and then if we want later, we can come back with a smaller brush and make smaller ones. All right, try to keep the white lines similar in size. Okay, so you see I'm just making random squares to indicate blocks of color. And we'll put one over here. And try to keep those edges clean. Okay, again, we can always go back with white and clean them up, but the less cleanup you have, the better. Okay. put a couple up here. And I'm going kind of fast on this, but you could take your time. All right, there's no rush to it. And we're just putting random shapes. And then we're going to indicate a little bit up here on the top of where the top of the guitar is as well. Again, like we said earlier, we want to push the color around as much as possible. Okay, maybe put a little one over here. Okay, so again, we're just, it's random, all right, but we're basically creating that white stripe thing that he has on his guitar, but we're doing it in reverse. We're actually painting the color and leaving the gaps where the white would be. Okay, so that pretty much does it for our red. We've got it on the face, we've got his arms and the guitar. So let's let the red dry. You know, take your time, put your patterns in there. We'll let the red dry, and when we come back, we're going to add the blue color to his face and part of his body, which would really tighten the rest of that up. All right, so let that dry, and then we'll hit it with the blue. All right, so moving on. We have our red is probably pretty good and dry by now. So what I've done is I've actually cleaned that red off the brush. So put it in the water and get most of that paint off there. And again, you can wipe the remaining paint on the paper towel to make sure the brush is clean and dry. So now we're going to go to the blue. So we really don't want any red or orange on that blue because it's a bright color blue. We're going to fill in the rest of the area of the face. So what you can do now is just anywhere that's white on his face, let's go and we'll make that blue. Okay, all these little areas here, and again, make sure you take the color right up to the black. You know, we don't want to see any canvas white on there. And take it right up to the red. Don't cover the red, so take it right up to the edge of the red. And this is where you're going to want to stay within the line, so to speak. And again, the same way I did it before, I'm not using a lot of paint, okay? The paint's not really heavy, so it's not globbing on me, all right? But it's just enough to cover that canvas. All right, and I'll take this right underneath the nose here. All right, so I fill it in like that, okay? All right, on top of the black now, I want to make a couple random shapes in that hair. Again, I'm just moving paint around, the color around. Okay, so we've got a little bit of strange, we'll call them strange shapes up here. All right, they're not really meant to be anything other than indication of color. All right, and then I'm going to get a little heavier over here. Let's make that come down here. And the blue on the black looks kind of cool, all right? The contrast is pretty stark, so it'll give you a nice effect when you're able to stand back and look at this when you're almost done. You know, you'll see how the blue looks against the black. It's pretty cool. All right, we'll put a shape there. Okay, a little one right here. All right, continuing with the blue, I'm going to fill in this white area underneath the shadow of his neck. And again, we indicated earlier where we had some yellow. Well, let's go ahead and fill in that area up to the yellow now. All right, and the same thing down here on his chest. This is all going to be blue. Same like before, just push the paint around You don't have to put a lot of paint on the canvas to make it look like it's covered. And then you can always go back and fill in heavier. All right. I'm going to put a little bit of indication down here that he's got something going on. Well, let's go like that. All right. Doesn't mean anything. It's just an indication of color. And then we're going to do the same thing on top of this black. A couple little lines of blue, some dots to show that there's some highlights on that metal part there. Okay. And then what I want to do is, while I've got blue on the brush, all right, I'm not going to put any more paint on there, and I'm going to almost dry the brush off. And then I'm going to take the edge of the brush and just ever so slightly slide it down the neck of his guitar. So you see what I did is just a little indication of blue. It's not a solid color. I let the white of the canvas come through, and it just gives us a hint of color going on there. Again, remember we said earlier we want to move our color all around, so I think that gives kind of a nice effect. All right, I'll maybe heavy up a couple areas of blue over here. Same thing here. I noticed the blue streaking a little bit on me up here, so I can try to go in and heavy it up now, or I'll just have to wait till it dries and come back and touch it again. All right, so there's not a lot of blue, but just, you know, it gives us another pretty bright color on there that actually complements the orange, the reds, and yellows kind of nicely. Okay, so we're going to let the blue dry, and then I want to come back, and I'm going to go with black. I'm going to clean up, and then we'll hit any other colors we want to fill in any of the other areas. All right, so let's let that blue dry for a minute. All right, so continuing on now. So now, like I said earlier, we're going to come back with black, all right, and fix up all these edges. So now everybody's is going to be a little bit different depending on how much paint you got over top the black. But what I want to do now is, and now I'm using my fine brush, what I want to do now is I want to go back and harden up those lines on that was on the original canvas of all the black that I gave you when you first started. All right, so I'm just going to go in and run the brush around the perimeter and clean up all those edges. So this could take a while, it could take a little bit of time depending on how much you overshot into the black like I did. I wasn't very careful, so I have a decent amount of cleanup to do. All right, and I'm going to do that inside the color areas as well. I want to bring back all of that black. You know, while it's not terribly important in the hair, you're definitely going to want to bring it back in the face, because those are the lines that are going to make Eddie look like Eddie. So we want to make sure we bring those back again. I'll make sure you get it on that line around the eye. All right, bring his eyes back. And it might not seem like it, but some of these little subtleties, especially when you're dealing with all this color, some of these little subtleties, if you don't bring them back, it really does change the outlook and the way, you know, the structure of his face could be. And that could really make or break your canvas if you think of in terms of it really looking like the celebrity or not. So you kind of want to bring all these lines back and crisp them up. All right, you can see the face is starting to take a little bit of a tighter shape now. just as you're doing it, be careful your arm doesn't get caught up in the black, or you'll smear that and then you'll have to wait till that dries and it'll make a mess. Alright, even these lines down here, you're going to want to bring those back. Alright, the stripes on the guitar, those are black, so we want to keep those black stripes. Alright, so you kind of get the point, right? So we're just cleaning them up, and then I really don't have any areas I want to hit with white, but more, you have white paint in your kit, so if you want to actually go through and clean up some of that white, you can as well. I'm okay with my white, but again, your canvas might look slightly different, and it might want to put a little more work in certain areas. So that's why we gave you enough paint to do that with. Okay, you can continue on, but that's pretty much it for Eddie Van Halen. I want to thank you for joining me today, and hopefully we'll see you again in the future. Have a good one.